This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November meeting of the North Haven Board of Finance. We have our agenda in front of us. However, before we get into it, I would like to ask that we amend the agenda. It came to my attention after the agenda was sent out that we do need to appoint a member to the Open Space Commission. So the first thing I'd like to do is ask for a motion to amend the agenda to add, I guess, right after the minutes, the appointment of a member to the Open Space Advisory Committee. I would ask for a second, please.
I make a motion.
It sounded like a second.
Second.
Second it is. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you. And then before we get into the regular meeting, just want to talk about two things, please. We did get in our package a revised budget-making schedule. I did take a look at it. There's no change in any of the major dates. What we had was some clarification, so just to give the members an example, on March 5th and 7th, the Board of Finance initial budget to the finance office is due, and right below that, the Board of Ed final budget was due. Those two dates were flip-flopped in the original budget-making schedule. And then also, for instance, as another example, on the 16th of April of 2025, the original meeting schedule had the Board of Finance budget to the finance office on the same day as our meeting, which would have been impossible. So I would say that really they're all just clarifications. There's no change in any of the other dates. I don't know that that needs a motion because it doesn't really change the original schedule. The other thing I wanted to do, which I know Mike will want to talk about as well, but all of us here on the board, and I'm sure everyone in town, got their new assessments this past Saturday. I got mine. My value, I believe, went up 50%, which is not out of line with what happened in the rest of the town. I know there was a lot of people making comments on some social media sites. I know Mike fielded a lot of calls himself, and I'm going to let Mike talk about that. The one thing I will say is I did ask Gary Johns, our assessor, to give me the grand list. This is all pre-BAA, by the way, for both the residential and commercial. And based on what I saw, the residential and the commercial went up almost exactly the same amount. There was a ever so slight difference in them. But that's good news for the residents. It means that they really won't be unfairly punished by any change in the weighting of commercial versus residential. With that, I'm sure Mike would like to add a couple comments.
Well, we all received the letters, ladies and gentlemen, and all of us were quite surprised. Every 5 years, Connecticut municipalities are mandated by the state to do a reval. Every 10 years, the reval has to include a physical inspection on the inside. So this particular year, there's about 25 towns and cities surrounding in this greater New Haven region that are going through reval. In North Haven, property values have jumped 37 to 38%. I think in Wallingford, it's around the same, maybe a little bit higher. So you can imagine the sticker shock that all of us saw when we received those letters. In my case, my home value went up over $110,000. So this past weekend, I was fielding calls, put a post on social media, calmed a lot of people down. They at least understood the process. NBC News called me this morning. They said they read my social media post, and this is in the words of NBC News. Mr. Friede, you made it in layman's terms so people can understand it. So they came in to interview me today, and I wanted to reiterate here at this meeting what I've been reiterating all weekend long and even on NBC News today, is that there are three options for our residents. The first one is to call the number on the letter. The town and cities across the state we have to hire outside valuation companies who do this. They're so-called experts. So you'll see a phone number, and that phone number, I believe, is 475-306-8300. You call and try to get an appointment. Now, the clock is running out on that, because it has to be within 5 days of you receiving the letter. You will have a phone call conversation. If you get no satisfaction on that, then the next step is that in February, by February 25th, you call the assessor's office, you ask for a form where you can appeal it to the Board of Assessment Appeals. These are other elected officials who hear the cases in person, and where you have a case to make if you feel the valuation is too high. Now, I've been telling people all weekend long, and even on NBC News, that what happens is in the 5-year period, from 5 years ago, 2019, to 2024, if you put improvements into your home, like you take me as an example, a brand new central air conditioning system, 5 years later, the valuating companies will look to see what you've done to improve your home. Is it a new roof? Is it a pool? Is it central air? Is it new vinyl siding? All that gets calculated. Now, if you've done nothing in 5 years, your house is still the same as it was 5 years ago, then that's an argument you can make when you go to the the Board of Assessment Appeals. So gather the facts, look back 5 years to see what you've done, what you didn't do, what's the same, and make your best argument, like all of us will who are going to contest these valuations. But ladies and gentlemen, this is happening now all over this region. North Haven was identified about 2 months ago as the 3rd hottest municipality for people that want to move into North Haven. Part of the valuation also includes the fact that the homes that have gone up for sale, in many cases, they're getting more than the asking price. And as 2 different residential real estate companies who called me this week told me that I'm using their words, there's bidding wars in the streets for homes that go up in North Haven. So the residential real estate agents confirmed with me this week that it's, for whatever the reasons, a hot community. People want to move in here. The asking prices are higher, the selling prices are higher. So that's a general summarization. 475-306-8300. That's the number to call the valuation company. Keep in mind, get the forms from the assessor's office to file for an appointment for the Board of Assessment Appeals. That has to be filled out by February 25th. You will get an in-person meeting, and you will be able to explain why you're contesting that valuation. Thank you.
It's February 20th.
February 20th, I'm sorry, yep. So, Tim just mentioned to me something else that I've been saying also. Let's get back to February 20th, 2025. That's the date to file the report. So, what's also going to happen, and this Board of Finance will be involved, that this mill rate is going to go down. We're at 34.65 now. That is going to go down. That is a guarantee. But what we can't guarantee, sitting here tonight on November 20th, is what it's going to go down to. Because the process is just beginning to unfold in terms of the departments coming in, asking for whatever they're looking for in their departments, and then we have to run through the Board of Finance procedure all the way through when we go to the first town meeting in April to present the budget. But what I can tell you, I'm going to repeat it again, the mill rate is going down. We don't know what yet. But I also don't want to obfuscate the fact that when mill rates go down as a result of reval, that doesn't mean that there's going to be tax decreases for everybody. That doesn't mean that everyone's going to zero out to no tax increase. It could mean some pay a nominal increase. It could mean that some zero out. It could mean that some get a reduction depending upon what the mill rate goes down to. But it also could mean that there still could be some that are going to receive a tax increase. So what we can control here is determine how many mills it's going to drop. But I'm going to say it again, because I like making commitments, because it puts me on the spot, and I like being on the spot and being in the spotlight. I like the bright light shining on pressure situations. I like it. This mill rate is going down. That is a promise.
Thank you, Mr. Frieda.
If I could just make one.
Isn't that
one
the
quick
same as saying the sun will come out on Friday? I mean, of course it's going down.
Well, a lot of people don't realize that, though.
Well,
That's the thing.
but you gotta quantify, and what we should end up measuring here eventually is whatever the grand list went up by percentage-wise, that's what the mill rate would go down if all taxes were to remain equal. That same percentage. So, if the average increase in assessment is say 25%, then the mill rate will go down 25% unless we decide to add dollars to the budget. So the answer is yes, but it was a quite obvious yes.
Nancy?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think that there's a very nice resource on our town's website under the Assessors Department that provides questions and answers regarding the reval. And for those who do not have access to computers, I would recommend that the next time we have a reval in 5 years, that what should accompany this one-page statement from eQuality Evaluation or whatever outside vendor we go with is exactly a hard copy of those questions and answers, because I feel as though that kind of sets the stage for understanding what exactly does the assessed value mean, what is the fair market value, what are the next steps. Some of the steps were articulated in the letter. Such as what phone number to call and so forth. But in terms of just putting in layman's terms, really how to understand this, I think that information really could come as part of the packet. And I agree that we need to really look at this very carefully in terms of if we were to have the exact same budget and the exact same mill rate, what would be the impact of the grand list change, and then one by one change the variables. So that would be my recommendation.
All right, thank you, Nancy. Any
Sure.
other comments?
No, a taxation is always, one of the goals is fairness, and it's good to know that commercial, industrial, or commercial at least, appreciated by about the same percentage. So people would see this as a balanced reassessment, and I don't think there's any reason to run to the to get the assessment appealed if indeed it's backed up by data from our revaluation company.
Says the appraiser.
Yes. Anyway, by the way, all right.
You should take off your name tag that says
By the way,
evaluation.
I just want to give Mr. Frieda credit for his PR. Great PR,
Yes.
and I'm sure that after government, you can get any job you want.
Just-
So can I make one more comment? Because there was someone that said to me that there should be an elimination of all property taxes. And think about that for a moment, that if that ever happened, which it never would, there'd be no education system, no police department, no fire, no sanitation. So the property taxes are a tool to buy resources and buy, town amenities, so to speak. So everybody out there is like a consumer. Every resident in North Haven is a consumer of North Haven's services. And the consumption of those services are the education system, police protection, fire protection, sanitation pickup, bulk pickup, leaf pickup. Those are where the taxes are going, in addition to having a government that has employees serving the residents. So any notion of eliminating property taxes and having no taxes at all would be the end of local government, and there'd be no resources for anybody living in the town.
Just one more point that I forgot to make is 5 years ago when we had our last revaluation, I think I remember our town assessor, Gary Johns, say that about 1/3 of the taxpayers would experience a tax payment reduction, about 1/3 would experience no change, and another 1/3 would experience a tax increase. So I don't know whether that will be the case this time, but it's certainly unlikely to be the case that everyone, as Mr. Frieda said, everyone will experience a tax decrease, even if the mill rate goes down.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, Nancy, Mike, Mike.
you.
Laura, Jean, Bob, anything? All right. Why don't we move on to the actionable items, starting with the minutes of the regular meeting on October 16th. I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept them.
I'll second.
Any comments on the minutes? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. All right, I mentioned at the top of the meeting that we annually do appoint someone, as do other boards and commissions in the town, to the Open Space Advisory Committee. Laura Jean Hannon was our representative last year. We do need appointment this meeting. We do have a volunteer, Nancy Barrett, who's done it previously. So I would like to nominate Nancy Barrett as the Board of Finance's representative to the Open Space Advisory Committee. I want to ask for a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I'll abstain.
One abstention. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, we all know we got our CAFR. It's been a little bit of a while now, must be 6 weeks at least. We've had conversations, probably in both the last two meetings, about having a presentation. We are between auditors, and so we don't have the services of our former auditor, who typically would be the one to come in and give the presentation. However, Ingrid has been kind enough to step up, and she will present a discussion of the audit for the board members and for the public.
Okay.
So Mr. Santafonte is not,
His services are done with the town.
I see. That's unfortunate, since this is his penmanship. Okay.
Right. Okay. So let's go over the agenda for tonight. We'll go over the terms of engagement of an audit. We'll have an executive summary. We'll have some financial highlights. We'll go over the federal and state single audit. And then we'll touch base on the governance communication, which is the 2-page communication that the auditor gave the Board of Finance. So let's go over the terms of engagement of an audit. The audit is meant to express opinions on whether the basic financial statements are presented in accordance to GAAP. Will express an opinion on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards and the schedule of expenditures of state and financial assistance. The audit will express an opinion on compliance related to major federal and state award programs. It'll provide a report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, and grants. And finally, we'll provide a report on internal control over compliance related to major federal and state award programs. Okay, let's go over our executive summary of financial statements. There's 4 types of opinions that an audit can have. It can have an unmodified opinion, a qualified opinion, an adverse opinion, or a disclaimer opinion. The town of North Haven received for fiscal year 2023 an unmodified opinion on financial statements. What does an unmodified opinion mean? It means that the auditor found no significant issues with the financial statements and they are presented according to GAAP. This opinion indicates a high level of transparency and reliability. Let's talk about our federal single audit. We received an unmodified opinion for major federal programs. there was no deficiency on internal controls over compliance, but there was a deficiency mentioned on bank reconciliations. Basically tying bank reconciliations for the audit. The bank reconciliations were delayed due to staffing issues. Our Board of Ed Director of Finance resigned, and there was a transition period. For the town side, we had a staff member that was handling bank reconciliations as well, and she resigned. So we had a transition period that caused a delay on our timely bank reconciliations. On the general ledger side,
And
because
Ingrid,
of the...
I don't mean to interrupt, but my
Sure.
understanding is you've been working to catch up on those, correct?
They are, I'll give you an update, but yes,
Okay.
right now they're done.
Okay.
They're done for last year, they're done for this year
Okay.
on the town side, and Board of Ed's still working on finalizing last year.
Thank you.
But I think we can talk about this a little bit later, but it's
Sure.
not just whether the task was done, but whether the process was completely overhauled in terms of having monthly closure processes as well as end-of-year closure.
Right, yes.
So we can address that later.
So, yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the ARPA reports reported to Treasury Department, did not agree to the general ledger. This is due to every municipality, they get a state payment report in July. So basically, we start auditing that state payment report in July, and the Board of Finance in August will give you those budget transfers to vote on. When that happens too early, it causes a discrepancy because then there has to be adjustments that the general ledger won't match. And we can't do any, it will have to be an audit adjustment instead of us making the adjustments up front. With this, I am proposing for us to change the budget transfers to our September meeting, so I would be able to accurately do those changes and give you the right reports.
Does that mean then we would have a town meeting that same month or the next month?
For the budget transfers?
Yeah, because typically we vote on it in August.
Right.
And then it is proposed to the town meeting at our September annual meeting. So if we shift it to our September meeting, we would also have to shift the town
Have to shift the
meeting.
town meeting, right. But there will always be this deficiency on the single audit if we don't do that, because there are different funds, and we can't shift stuff from general fund to other funds, especially on grants. It's a big report. So this was the deficiency that we had in ARPA. For the state single audit, we received also an unmodified opinion, and the same deficiencies were presented: the internal control on bank statements and the general ledger on ensuring closing procedures accurately every month and throughout the year. We don't have this problem on the town side. We close every month. And to go back to your point, Nancy, yes, everything has been closed and it's up to date on the town side. We are ready now for our 24 fiscal year audit.
Okay.
We are waiting, as of right now, we are waiting on Board of Ed. So we have to match our general ledgers to be able to close the year. We spoke with them today. They said they'll be ready by Friday. I can make those adjustments and move on with the audit. Let's go through our governmental activities. The town operates on an accrual basis accounting. Our net position was $62,689,857 at the end of the year. Our net position increased by $8.5 million. This increase was primarily driven by our capital outlay net of depreciation. Our largest portion of net position in the investment was capital assets, our $157 million. go over some financial highlights on general fund side. Our unassigned fund balance was $9.2 million, or 8.4% of budgetary expenditures and transfers out. Total fund balance represents 9.92%. Our unrestricted fund balance decreased by $9.3 million. This was due to the Teachers' Retirement Board. The OPEB liability is now being fully funded by the state, so we don't have to consider that liability now. Our tax collection rate was budgeted at 98.5%, and it was actual collected, it was 98.7%. Our governmental capital assets total $267 million. This was an increase of $9.4 million from the prior year. This was mainly due to all the improvements that we have made to our buildings. That was 68% of that. Depreciation expense was $5.8 million.
Ingrid, would you just mind repeating what you said about the OPEB liability and the Board of Ed, please?
Sure. We had if you'll see that too in page, I'll give you the page number. And I can go back a couple slides here too. If you see the unrestricted fund balance there, it went from 110 to 96. That was mainly due to OPEB. And then I can also give you the page number in the back that talks
So
about.
the state took on the liability for the OPEB related to,
100% to its
And that was nine-
Teacher State Retirement Board.
okay, and that was 9-something million, you said?
That was,
I get it, okay.
yes. I have the page in British. It's like 110, I think.
15 maybe?
All right, why don't you go
Give me
on,
just a
Ring, you can get us the
second.
page later.
I can find it for you really quick. Yes, page 90.
Thank you.
I'll give you a couple minutes to find it.
That actually helps us, so.
So you'll see in previous ACFR of 22, you'll see the liability on town share, and now you'll see a zero. That was only for the teacher retirement board.
Right.
Ingrid, if you could just go back one
Sure.
slide there real quick. Just, the bullet points. I think you were on the right side. The tax collection rate at 98.7%. Since it seems as though this entire reporting cycle was shifted just a little bit due to, collecting all the information, how far out were you able to go in order to collect that amount of money? It certainly wasn't, as of June 30th.
It's usually June 30, and then we do the 60-day collection
Right.
period.
So
Yes.
only 60 days?
Yes.
No more? Okay.
Prior to OPEB now being, with the teachers covered 100% by the state, what was their state's percentage before?
I'll have to look into that for you.
I don't think it was any percent. I think we handled all of it, but we'll double check.
I can check in previous year.
Our teacher OPEB liability was only 9.8 million? Okay. All right.
I have the previous year report here.
We can continue.
It doesn't say yes, I'll have to get back.
Yeah, why don't we
We'll just
continue?
continue with the bullet
Right.
points. Yep.
Sure. Let's go over some general fund budgetary basis. On a budgetary basis, revenue were 1.8 million less than anticipated. This was primarily due to the ESSER grant of $998,000 being recorded on the Education Grants Fund instead of the general fund. This was offset by an increase of ECS of $266,000 and a pilot of $467,000. We also had an interest increase of $201,000. Our expenditures were 1.3 million less than budgeted. These expenditures exceeded revenues by 466,000. However, the town budgeted 1.4 million of fund balance, but used only 323,000. This is a difference of 1.1 million. We did not use the special revenue transfer of $550,000, and there was a GASB rule that we had to make an adjustment of $513,000. This is an unrealized loss on investments, and what it means is that you'll adjust your financials for $513,000, and as if it was a surrender value as of that date, and then every year you'll gain that back. Basically, you'll have to make it doesn't have nothing to do with cash.
So if I could, it's a non-cash
Sure.
adjustment that
Right.
resolve itself over time.
And it's specifically designated to outside interest that Rich and I have put cash into that we're generating over 5%.
Right.
So GASB 72 makes an assumption that we're going to liquidate or surrender the products, which we did not. But because of the GASB rule, we have to take that $513,000 offset.
Yes.
As Ingrid said, we're getting penalized for the unrealized gains of the product, and they're yielding great percentages and have been in terms of interest income, but we can't
Right.
do anything about 72, so.
Yes. Our debt was 97 million. It was decreased by 957,000 when compared to prior year. Our GO bonds total 85 million at June 30 of 2023. This was a decrease of 6.1 million compared to previous year. And the town permanently financed 5.5 million of bonds in November 2023. You'll ask why was this included? There's a GASB rule as well, as if we permanently finance bonds. When the audit is not done, you'll have to include them in the audit. The town also last year implemented GASB 96. These are subscription-based leases, and we incurred a liability of $293,000 due to this new rule. This was the first years that all municipalities had to do this. The town operates on 5 plans. Employees were funded at 81%, police at 74%, fire 88%, volunteer 72%. Officials is fully funded by our general fund, and OPEB is separate. Our total investments for all plans it's $120,256,737, and our net pension liability is $31 million. The aggregate of all plans are funded at 79.3%. Our OPEB liability is funded at 0.94%, and we have a $96 million liability on that. This is a highlight on some grants that were tested in our audit, in the federal and state single audit. There was the coronavirus state grant that was tested, Title I grants, and the Education Stabilization Fund for federal. For state, there was $9.8 million tested, and they tested pilot, MRSA, municipal grants and aid, and the school security grant. Let's review the governance communication that the auditor gave you in that 2-page document that was provided to you last Board of Finance meeting. He's specified that GASB 96 was a new standard that was adopted. He made significant estimates on actuarial assumptions for pensions and OPEB liability. He stated that there was no disagreements with the management, there was no difficulties encountered in performing the audit, there was no uncorrected misstatements, and there was no independent issues on his end. That is all I have for you guys.
All right, thank you, Ingrid. Let's see if any of the members have any questions in regards to the CAFR or your presentation.
Thank you,
Good
Ingrid.
job.
Nice job.
Good job.
All right.
Well, in the last handout that we received here in September, at the bottom of page 1, it said nothing came to our attention to believe that such material inconsistencies exist or that the information contains a material misstatement of fact. So there was no material misstatement of fact. However, they contradict themselves on page 2 when they said, the audit, we conducted our audit under planned scope and timing of the audit. We conducted our audit consistent with the planned scope and timing we previously communicated to you. I don't think that we got the communication on the timing that we would never have approved of. So, a very disappointing performance on the timing part. But other than that, they said they had no disagreements with management and no difficulties in dealing with management, which is amazing. That's very good.
All right, thank you, Mike.
With regard to the information here that was presented, I just wanted to know, does the point of information, does the bonding rating agencies, do they request and receive a copy of our CAFR?
Yes.
Yes, they do, yes.
Well, it's publicly available, Mike, anyways.
Right. So to that point, Michael, even though we had a rating call this year, they wouldn't use 2024 information. They refer back to the CAFR a year ending 2023.
Okay. Yeah. It was a tough year financially with regard to the aftermath of the loss of our finance director and the ever-changing business managers that we had on the education side. So there's things to like and question throughout here. But but overall, I think that we're not a town that's poorly managed financially.
Thank you, Mike. Any other members like to comment on the, or ask any questions of Ingrid?
I think we caught a typo here somewhere. With regard to the medical and dental positions. Is it page 64? Let me see, it's 64. A lot of pages here. Yeah, on page 64, there was an error that was caught. That was not, it's pretty obvious here. Under the medical and dental insurance listings here, for some reason, 21-22 is listed and 22-23 is also listed. The amounts of the claims charged I'm sorry, claim estimates and claims paid in 21-22. That, I believe that's an error in that the amounts were doubled.
Yes, this is due to a Munis does that when
Yeah.
we process payroll, and it has to get adjusted every year. That wasn't adjusted in '22.
That's okay. Yeah,
It was missed by the
yeah,
auditor.
that's, it's
Um,
obvious. All right.
So this includes,
It has been corrected, yes.
it
the,
includes fiscal '21 and '22, is that what we're saying?
No, the 22, it's actually, it should be like 5 point, it should be half of that. It always doubles it because Munis, when we process, it's a Munis correction that we have to do.
Right.
That it does the transaction twice and we have to correct it. It is corrected now, we just do those journal entries every month.
Okay,
But yeah, that is a mistake in there.
thank you.
Yeah, and the information on the pensions, I always look at some of the administrative costs, and I'm trying to get some clarification on, pages 72 and 73 of what the service costs are for each plan versus what the administration expenses are.
What page?
72 and 73. It goes over into 74 as well, but for each plan, a service cost is listed, and there's a separate line for administration expenses. And just trying to determine what the service costs represent, because for each group, it varies anywhere between, aside from the volunteers, $438,000 per plan, $571,000 for the I think that's the fire. I'm sorry, that's the police. And for the town employees, the service costs for 1 year to run the pension plan is listed at $726,000. Those are big.
I'm looking at the previous year, Catherine, and it has the same cost.
Same
But
cost, yeah.
yes. I'll have to look into that for you. I think that's,
Just
we
looking for
have
an explanation.
investments, and then when we cash them to pay payroll, it has a cost. So that is the cost of activity, and the cost of administration would be the administration of the actual plans.
Okay.
I'll just say this on a general statement, that what we've done here down through the years, started with Ed and I, and then Rich and I now, when I first came in office, we had an inactive management plan on the pensions. So they were yielding, let's say, 2%, 2.5% in terms of returns. Well, the anticipated rate of return is 7.5% that we have to factor in. So we were paying, let's say back then, 0.28 basis points to have the outside people manage the plan. We bumped it up. We're paying higher basis points now. Let's say now it's 0.68. So we're paying more for an active management plan, of which we are actively involved with them in terms of reviewing where the investments should go. But, we're averaging 11, 12% on the returns now with the pension plan. So we're paying more, getting a higher yield. As long as what we're yielding is higher than what we're paying, and as long as what we're yielding is greater than the anticipated rate of return, it would be our goal over the course of time to reduce the annual required contribution. So we're paying more, Michael, for more active management.
Okay. There are a lot of trade-offs in here, because on page 56, when we're talking about some of the long-term, this known as a note there, the top line, the energy performance contract, is that with Johnson Controls?
Yes.
All right, so that original amount of $6.3 million, which is now down to $5.27 million, it costs us, we pay about $284,000 $288,000 a year. So the question would be, that we just would reflect on, is are we saving $284,000 or more in energy savings per year?
I don't think we pay anything on that. That's free, right?
I'll have to look into that,
Yeah.
but these are notes. This has nothing to do with our pensions.
No, I was changing the
Oh.
subject.
Change the subject,
Okay.
right?
Oh, I'm
Okay.
flipping around.
I
here.
was like, wait a minute. Okay.
So regarding this, the concept was and is that we're paying down this note for infrastructure that was put into the school system and the town buildings right up front through the energy savings.
Right.
The more efficient systems generated energy savings.
Right.
That's how we're paying for it. That's what you were kind of saying.
Right.
Okay. Glad we're saving. And then to flip around even more, just because we always care, on page 128 is more or less the statuses of what our self-insurance program for medical and dental, what the net positions were at the end of fiscal year '23. In column 1, right at the bottom, after a year in which we were positive by $330,000, our net positions at once was at $174,000, so it's positive. On the education side, we could see how they could put money into reserves, because they were up over $900,000 that year, and their total net position is, at that point, was $2.9 million. So it's good to know at that point that this program was working. We did have a rough year in just this past fiscal year, and so that'll be reflected in the next CAFR. As part of the workshop, I just thought I would bring that up.
Thank you, Mike. All right, anyone else? All right, thank you. Why don't we move into the regular reports, if you could, please? Starting with the revenue side. I guess the only thing I would say is that we're certainly doing very well on our short-term investments.
Yes.
We've collected, frankly, already almost nearly the entire budget for the year. We probably will by the end of this month, I'm guessing. And actually, Nancy, you've asked about the miscellaneous receipts in the past. You might have asked, in fact,
Yes.
Ingrid, if we knew what these were. I believe she
Yes,
asked.
this was a $107,000 blight settlement case.
Okay.
That was a major part of it.
And we'll have another at least 150,000 coming in on blight. That's not budgeted revenue. That we'll see eventually somewhere in the balance of this fiscal year in this miscellaneous receipt.
Yeah, but the budget for that line item is 200,000, and we're already at almost 110%, so that
These are
107
one time.
Yeah, so the 107 only counts for about half of that, so we brought in another 21,000 just this last month. It seems like we have a pretty steady flow of income even outside of blight. And I am glad to see that we got at least the first installment of the education ECS grant. And it's not exactly 1/4 of the total amount, but it's pretty darn close. Our current tax revenue is at 56%, which is also great. Again, we're 4 years into the fiscal year, so 4 out of 12 is 1/3, so we should be targeting about 33% for our various expenses and revenues. Unfortunately, our building fees, fire fees, and paramedic services are a little bit on the low side. Any insights as to why that is?
Well, all I can say, it's going to get better. So with these projects I've got going on, but there's no insight right now on this. It's more of a trend issue. Building fees tend to get pulsated. There's slow weeks and then there's major weeks. And there's no consistency week to week, the same amounts coming in, so.
Any other questions or comments on the revenue? No. Why don't we move on to the expenses, please? I actually asked Mike this already, but I think it's worthy mentioning. The only thing that, not the only thing, I guess I'll say two things. I made a point, as I sort of have in the past, to look at the commodity-based items, heat, oil, gas. Maintenance isn't exactly commodity-related, but we're actually doing well in all those categories. I didn't see any really big spikes anywhere. I did notice, Ingrid, that on page 11, under transfer station, towards the bottom there, the recycled materials at 50% and the transportation and hauling is at 68.
That's usually seasonal.
Yeah, that reflects a lot of bulk pickup
Yeah.
towards the end of September there.
We just had both pickup.
Yeah.
But the bottom line on this is 33% time elapsed, 41% budget expenditures. But on one of the biggest items in this debt, 91% of the debt has already been paid. So 41% versus 33, but the 41% also represents a $9 million payment already made. That's a non-recurring $9 million.
Yes.
So these numbers, the expenses are really, right now, projected to be well under budget.
Ingrid, on page 4, under public libraries, building maintenance and repair, seems as though we have a pretty substantial encumbrance there of about $19,000. Any insights as to what that represents?
Yes, on the project for the roof coating, we had a bonding issue of $150,000.
Yes.
And the bill was for $166,260, so the excess cost went to the budget line.
No coupon available?
No coupon available, no. We tried.
You try, that's all you can do.
I guess I'll warn the members, there's more money coming on that, up on that, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Okay.
And I did check up on utilities, UI, the rates that they had included, the service charges, they're gonna be for 10 months, so we are gonna have pretty high UI bills for all departments.
And Ingrid, I remember this coming up many, many years ago, and it kind of jumped out of the page at me. On page 6, under central supply services, there's a copy machine rental for town hall. Do we have any economies of scale when it comes to rentals of equipment like this, in which we can get some sort of a uniform price for copy machines at the police department and here in town hall and over in Board of Ed and other places, or is it just?
Only on our side, but they are based on contracts and bidding, so we do have a lot of them that are expiring and they're renewing, so they are all over the place on pricing.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
So we purchased the machines.
We could do the buyout, yes.
Well, this is a rental.
This is rental.
This
that's-
particular
yeah.
one is
Yeah,
rental,
this
but
was
in
our
some
rental.
cases we own
Yes.
it.
Some of them we own, some of them we rent, yes.
Right, and when we own them, we have some sort of a maintenance contract type
Right,
thing.
yes.
But if we rent it, there's definitely a maintenance contract. Okay. And again, I think another thing that is contributing to our being at this 41%, 41.8% of budgeted expenditures is, for a lot of departments that are over budget, they have pretty substantial encumbrances.
Yes,
So for example, Public Works, they have these consultants that we know we have to pay, but there's an encumbrance of $98,000.
Right.
So we haven't paid that, but it's in the budget. But what I'm wondering is, it seems as though in some departments, it's the practice for certain line items to establish an encumbrance amount, whether it's for purchase orders that draw on that money or however they do it. But it just seems like, particularly when it comes to vehicle maintenance and repair, there's always a pretty substantial encumbrance line, and I don't know whether it's just.
usually vehicle maintenance and repairs they consist of many, many encumbrances that make up that amount.
Okay.
They
I'm
could be
assuming
less
it's
than
because they got an
5,000, but it's
estimate.
just.
Yeah.
They must get an estimate of the work
Right,
before
for
we put it
example,
in.
for police, they can't wait on an encumbrance from us to go repair in a car, and if it's an emergency, they'll have to use, so they'll have tires of like $1,000. We make them do purchase orders for that.
Right, but why wouldn't they just go purchase it? Why would you need it as an encumbrance? I guess that's what I'm trying to understand.
We need purchase orders for everything.
Right,
I think the encumbrance recognizes a future liability, correct?
Right,
So this is a cash basis report we're looking at, except the encumbrance is saying, we've got a commitment
right,
out there for some service or part,
yes.
right? So
And we are also liquidating them now. Every 3 to 4 months, we'll go through all of them and start liquidating.
But I guess my point was,
Okay.
one example why we might have that is, we might have vehicles that we know are in the shop, so to speak.
Right.
And so we know that we haven't paid for them yet, but we know we're gonna get a bill for it. That's the encumbrance, right?
Yes.
Right.
I see.
It
So-
kind of helps them with budgeting too, if you encumber it and you know that, versus
your-
not putting
your
in there, you're
expenses
gonna
coming
make
out.
sure that you're gonna be watching at
Right.
other line items that they don't
So there's
go-
no surprises in the future.
Right, there's no surprises and they get overage.
Ingrid, just a question. So on page 8, one of the smallest lines in this entire report is the budget for the Board of Assessment Appeals, which is a grand total of $2,350. I guess my question is, so what is that for? Is it for the stenographer, or, and will that go up a lot?
No, the stenographer is in, I think in
here.
Public Works. This is their board. Just
I'm
like
just-
we have the Board of Finance, this is for their board.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because of what we all talked about earlier, would that number go up substantially? 'Cause I'm just not sure what the expense is for. It's not for professionals, right? It's not to hire a professional.
No,
right?
it's
No.
a lot of supplies and papers and,
Okay.
Yeah.
you know, they have copies, so, but there's no payroll associated with it.
Right.
Right.
So,
And they're not hiring professionals during the hearings, right?
no.
Right,
No.
okay, right.
In legal, that's a line that has gone up substantially. If we do an advertisement on the paper ad, those ads cost a lot of money.
They do, but we're only over
Yeah,
$43.
$43.
A point of information, don't the members of the Board of Assessment Appeals get paid something?
I'll
Not to
look
my
into
knowledge,
it.
I don't know.
I don't know. It would have been there.
If they do, I need to get a paycheck.
Yeah, wait a minute.
Oh, you're
We're on the wrong board.
finance. I thought that the Board of Assessment Appeals.
I'll look into that.
Yeah, I don't, you might be right, I don't think so,
They
but
work in usually September on the cars and March.
I'll look into that.
I think they do. They do. But you look into it. I thought maybe that's what that was.
Other questions, comments?
Yeah, I just have a clarification. So when I drive around, especially my end of town, I often notice that there's Hamden police directing traffic when they're digging in the street. So is that captured by, does Hamden invoice us, or how does that work? Because there's a lot of digging, the water company or the gas company right around that, where Vic's Cafe is. Oh, there's always, for weeks, it's constantly one way, and a lot of times I'm seeing Hamden Police Department, not North Haven Police Department.
I think
That's,
that might be the gas company.
And that's
paying for
police
that.
outside duty, they're contracted by them, so they bill them directly
Yeah.
to
So
the
they're
company
bi-
that's
so
doing the
that- so
job.
it's a bit- Okay, because I've noticed it's a lot.
But we're saying Hamden's billing them directly.
Yeah,
Right,
Hamden's
Hamden
billing
will
them
with
directly.
Whoever the police
All
department
right, so
is.
that would just
That's
show
doing the
in
job.
some kind of, is there a certain line or?
No, it's not.
No,
It's off,
no,
it's not in our
off
budget.
hand.
It's in, okay,
Right.
all right.
Budget.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, this has probably happened the entire time I've been here, but the capital in our monthly report is just listed as whatever capital has been expended, not capital as a percentage of the capital budget.
Yes, we move capital to a different fund, so I'll provide a report next budget meeting.
Right, so,
I'll have
but,
to move-
so the
transfer that there.
grand, so on the last page, the grand totals that are listed with the 41.8%, the grand total of 64,557, that represents the town budget of, on the town side, of 63,844, plus whatever the capital expenditure happens to have occurred up to
Yes.
that point, right? So that's a variable number, based on how much capital we end up
Yes,
paying for. Okay.
I guess,
but that will be fully spent by the year, we usually,
but the 854 is the full budgeted number, right?
No,
for the
Capital?
capital, yes.
Right.
well, really?
854,668.
Yes, for all our capital.
So I guess to Mike's question, the sum total of the grand totals on all these lines on our last page is accurate.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else on the expenditures? Why don't we move on to the Board of Ed?
So I have a couple of comments on the Board of Ed reports. Again, this is pertinent to the audit review that we just went through. So first of all, as we know, at the end of the last fiscal year, the Board of Ed concluded the year with a surplus of $676,119, rounding up. However, and back in, I think it was September, they, in their minutes, I have a recording of, or the paperwork showing that they have allocated money from that total amount into 3 different accounts. I think 200,000 to special ed, 200 to workers' comp, and then the remaining balance of 276,119 to the non-lapsing fund. And I don't see any evidence of
That
any
has
of those
not
payments.
happened yet. They had, he did, I think, in last meeting specify that they had some errors, of some booking errors, so they don't have the 600. In fact, I don't think they have, we're still reconciling with them. We're waiting for them. They'll have the numbers by Friday, so I'll be able to give you guys a better report.
Okay,
But they don't have those 600,000.
because again, that was
So
voted
that's why I
on,
haven't transferred them.
that was voted on in September, and so the Board of Ed has now met September, October, and now November, so they've met for the 3rd time. And I just think that there has to be some, more timely reporting and accuracy in the reporting. So, so I attended their November Board of Education meeting because, once again, I took a look at their budget reports, and the Board of Ed budget is the largest portion of our town's, the 4 parts of our town's budget: town, Board of Ed, capital, and contingency. So that is the largest portion of the budget, and the largest expenditure line item in the Board of Ed budget is the teacher salaries. It's about $23 million. And so I have been following that particular line item because last month, which was the third month of the fiscal year, it should have been at about 25%, and it was at 7.7%. And this month, which is the fourth month, it should be around 33.3%, and it is currently at 19.4%. And so I went to the Board of Ed meeting to ask why there is this discrepancy between where they expect to be based upon the budgeted amount for this particular line item. And they think that they're maybe one payroll cycle behind in updating this particular line item. But I don't think that that could be the case, because I think that a single pay cycle is somewhere around, 1.2 to $1.5 million for this particular line item, and that would still not get you anywhere close to where it's supposed to be. So, I'm just trying to understand exactly how we got to this place, and the reason that I'm concerned is the pattern that I saw last year and the year before is that this line item lags every single month. We get to the end of April, and they've spent about 62%. In 10 months, they've spent about 62% of the budgeted amount. And then, let's say that's about $13 million. And then in the last 2 months of the year, somehow on this one line item, they're able to spend an additional $9 million. So even if they are extending teachers' salaries into the summer months, it still does not, the math doesn't work. So I'm just trying to understand, is it the case that they're utilizing this line item for transfers to cover expenditures, over expenditures in other line items? Because we do not get the reporting for the months of May and June.
I
So Nancy,
think it
did you
could be-
ask this question when you were at the meeting?
I did.
What did they say?
And again, I was kind of met with, well, Christian has the answers, and Christian didn't have the answers because, again, he is working with this outside vendor who takes care of the payroll. And so it's kind of a two-step process. And
It is, they
as
do
you
have
know,
ADP as their payroll, they don't have Munis, we have it in-house, so
Right.
everything happens. live.
So it has to be in Munis at some point, eventually. And it's for our purposes as well as for, overall transparency, because they provide these budget reports every month as part of the Board of Ed agenda. I just think in terms of transparency to the public, that somehow, just like the auditor said, we have to get this better. This has to be more accurate, more up-to-date, because as it is now, I have no confidence that this is a real number.
I think it has to do with both things. As he expressed, he was probably one payroll behind of entering the data. And the second is the fact that the teachers do choose the way that they want to be paid, so they can get a lump sum at the end.
Right.
And so your number is never gonna be the 33% or the month, kind of like what we have in the town, we get paid regular. Their number is never gonna be consistent.
Right, but like in the first month of the year, this line item was like $5,000.
Yeah,
And
that
last
they
month,
needed
it
to
was
do some
single
catch-up.
digits.
Right.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just seems like, okay, we're moving in the right direction, but I don't really have a lot of confidence that this number, and I don't have a way to kind of quality check this. And
Right.
so it concerns me, again, because it is the largest expenditure line item in their budget. So again, I'm not telling them how to spend their money, but in the interest of accurate and reliable accounting, I have to feel as though that, these numbers are what they are reporting to be. So you said that you have a system in place with the Board of Ed now for monthly
First monthly
closeouts
checking.
and end-of-year closeouts?
Yes.
And so the monthly closeouts, you think?
It will be, they're also their teachers, there's a lot of grants involved in
Yes.
that too.
Exactly.
So they have to do adjustments, and they have to do those adjustments monthly.
Yes, and so that's part
another
2.
thing that will affect this line.
Yes, so I thought that exact same thing,
Right.
and I went to the actual grants that are listed, both state and federal grants. Many of them have a line that says teachers, and there's only one of them that has a year-to-date actual of $32,000, which again, as a fraction of 23 million is just a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
So, so that was my thought, was, well, maybe they're relying on the grants first and then our budget second. But it just doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm just a little bit concerned about this particular statistic and its accuracy.
Thank you, Nancy. Ingrid, could you ask this question to the Board of Ed for me? So, in the last week of June, when some teachers choose to get a lump sum payment for the summer, which of course is in our next fiscal year, is that being expensed in the prior year? So, as an example,
Yes,
at the end, in 2024 here, if a group of teachers took a lump sum in June for the balance of the year, which would be the start of our next fiscal year, are they reporting it in the 24 numbers or the 25s? Because if they were doing it in the 25s, you would think that they would start off the year with a big
Right now,
jump.
they are previous year expenditures.
They are.
So that, yeah.
So that
They are-
partially
That's part
explains-
of the accruals, their
Right.
encumbrances at
Okay.
year end.
So that partially explains why we get a lot of expenditures in the last month or so.
Right, yeah.
Right. But even if in that last 2 months, you counted it as 4 months rather than 2 months, it's still the
It's
the
usually
numbers.
4 or 5 payrolls, and there are a lot.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, most of them, I think, choose to be paid at the end of the year.
I also think the stipends are paid during that period too. The teachers, there's a lot of stipends in the Board of Ed school, in the district. I think they're lumped in there too at the end of April.
Okay,
Check that though, so.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, Nancy?
Again, you know, they're talking about the workers' compensation line being over based upon the receipt from a vendor administrative fee. And you can see that based upon their budget line item, but we don't have their workers' compensation special fund. So I would imagine that they could turn to the special fund in order to actually supplement that particular expenditure, but we don't have that special fund report in this packet.
They do give the balance though, right? The
Yeah,
balance at
they-
the
they
bottom,
give
it's
you a
$387,000,
Mhm. Yep.
right?
As a cash balance, not as a.
Hmm.
Sometimes they've expended money and then reimbursed themselves in a line item after the fact. Is that right?
What do you mean?
Like with this special ed transportation and so forth, I think that there's times when they'll go and take all the expenses on out of their own budget when in fact it's covered by other sources.
If they haven't get their grant, if they're not sure, they'll have to expense them out of their operating budget.
Okay, yeah. Well, we don't know the timing of the receipts of their money,
Right.
but yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The workman's comp fund is here, Nancy. It's the last page. The last item on the last page.
Last item on the last page. Oh, okay. So that was, it's just baked in with the medical and dental?
It's on that page, it's
Yeah,
at the bottom.
it's on that same page. Okay. So again, we don't see that $200,000 infusion here. And they're running a deficit here as well, it looks like.
Okay, anything else from the members on the Board of Ed? If not, I'll accept the motion on the reports.
Make a motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Last 3 items on the agenda are 3 separate bonding package resolutions. We received the resolutions when we arrived this evening. So I think what we'll do here is, I'll read them separately, and then I think Mike is going to infill a little bit on the details of each of these. So why don't I do that? First up is milling and paving of town roads. Resolved that the Board of Finance recommends that the town of North Haven appropriate $2,800,000 for the milling and paving of town roadways. The project shall consist of milling and removal of waste materials, paving of materials, installation of manholes and drainage risers, traffic protection, including signage, and police and flag personnel. The appropriation may be spent for design, demolition, and construction costs, equipment, furnishings, materials, site improvements, survey costs, architect fees, engineering fees, other consultant fees, legal fees, net temporary interest, or other financing costs, and other expenses related to the project, and that the town issue bonds or notes and temporary notes in amount not to exceed $2,800,000 to finance the appropriation. The total amount of bonds issued shall be reduced by the amount of grants or other funds received and not separately appropriated for the project.
All right, so this not only includes town roads, approximately 6.5 to 7 miles, but it also includes the Northeast Firehouse parking lot. It also includes the new transfer station as we're moving that to become more ADA compliant, and that'll be a parking lot paved there. But this also includes a couple of other major things, and it may be complicated to understand, but I'll try to take you through it here. So, Sackett Point Road, from the new bridge to State Street, has to be repaved, remilled, and has to have drainage infrastructure improvements. The state is giving us $7 million to do this, but we have to match the $7 million by $750,000. So that $750,000 is in the $2.8 million. We have a problem in front of Town Hall with the busyness of the traffic, with some people going to some of the stores on the corner, not complying with the crosswalks there. It's become a really hazard there, including in the front of Town Hall. So we're able to get $1.1 million from the state to redesign the whole front of Town Hall, all the way up to Church Street, down to near Shawmut there. Part of that will be upgrading sidewalks, improving the safety on the parking lot side of the street for those cars that are parking there. There'll be a degree of sidewalks there where people won't have to kind of walk in between cars. There's a whole design that's been done on that, but we have to incur a match on that. And that match is about $100,000+. So between Sackett Point Road and the match for Church Street, it's a little bit short of $200,000 actually. That's in the $2.8 million. So the $2.8 million includes, let's say, 6.5 to 7 miles worth of roads that I mentioned. It includes Sackett Point Road from the bridge to State Street, paving, drainage upgrades. And by the way, there's businesses flooding there, including some big Grand List members. That'll help them. It includes the Northeast Firehouse. It includes 282 Quinnipiac. There's a parcel down there that we have that we're repaving. And it includes about $100,000 for the transfer station. So the net amount, the bonding, $2.8 million, which is actually reflective of the grants, the matches for the grants. So for that particular resolution, it will not exceed 2.8. It could come in a little bit less, but it's not going to exceed 2.8. So in other words, the state is coming up with $8.1 million for the town to do two very important projects. So our match is about $940,000.
I have a quick question, Mr. Frieda. Is the paving of Sackett Point Road from the bridge to State Street, is this part of the Sackett Point Bridge project?
It's an extension of the Sackett Point Road Bridge project.
So this is now the second
Right.
extension of that project. We've already had one $3 million extension in bonding.
Yeah, that's
correct?
totally separate. So
And
that's
then
from-
this
that-
would be an additional,
This is to pave, like I said, to pave, which would be our expense, to pave from the bridge, where they already paved and renovated from the bridge to Universal Drive.
Right.
That was part of the original plan. So
Right.
we have to put that aside. This is the balance of that.
and it wouldn't be covered by the $3 million?
No.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with this.
So, and again, in that original agreement, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the federal government had 80% and the state government had 10%, and we have 10%? Is that?
We have 10%, and there was a cost overrun, which is not 3 million, which is 300,000. 2.7 million was reimbursed by the state for the $3 million.
Right.
So
But in
that's a-
terms of the proportion, it was like a 90-10 split, but that 90% was split between the state and federal government.
Yeah, that's
Wasn't-
been like that since 2008, everybody knows that,
Right.
yes, so.
Right.
So this is now from the other side of the bridge, the completed side, to Sackett Point, through the railroad tracks. Get all that straightened out, get the drainage straightened out, major flooding at Unicor there. I have the CEO in my office, he's telling me about all the trials and tribulations there. So to get this 7 million from the state is pretty significant.
Thank you, Mike. All right, I'll accept the motion on the resolution.
I'll make a motion.
I'll
Sec-
second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. Diane, would you like to read the second one for us, please?
Resolved that the Board of Finance recommends that the town of North Haven appropriate $450,000 for repairs, improvements, and replacements to the roof and other structural elements of various town buildings, including but not limited to roof and related repairs to the Walter Gulrich Community Pool. The appropriation may be spent for design, demolition, and removal of materials, construction, equipment, materials, site improvement, survey costs, architecture fees, engineering fees, other consultants' fees, legal fees, net temporary interest and other financing costs and other expenses related to the project, and that the town issue bonds or notes and temporary notes in the amount not to exceed $450,000 to finance the appropriation. The total amount of the bond issued shall be reduced by the amount of grants or other funds received and not separately appropriated for the project.
All right, thank you, Diane. Mike, would you mind?
Well,
providing some
I'll
additional
take the
detail?
last one. Ingrid, you want to take this one, and then I'll do the
Sure.
last
Yeah.
one, and I'll help
Yes.
you on this one. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
Yes. We had the original bonding packet for the pool roof, but there was some structural that is, they found some issues. on,
Much greater than what we thought.
Yes, so we need to make sure that about 200,000, it's gonna be for the pool to secure the roof. And we have also find major issues in, if you guys take a look at all of our maintenance and repairs lines for the different buildings in the town, we have many air conditioners, roof repairs, and things that need to be addressed.
Deferred maintenance.
Yes, and this is, if it doesn't go here, it'll end up being an emergency repair on our
And it'll
budget.
cost more money when it's an emergency repair.
We also have issues here. Outside this door here, there's brickwork that's decaying down at the bottom of that door outside going down these stairs. We have to replace these ceiling tiles. We have a rug here that's 12 years old that, quite frankly, I think is filthy, and we can't continue to present this appearance here at Town Hall. Now, Town Hall is going to be probably the least amount of money put in versus, as you know, with this $450,000. But this Town Hall has to be painted. And quite frankly, folks, I have big-time people coming in here, developers, presidents of companies, and it's almost an embarrassment sometimes. So a portion of the $450 will go here to Town Hall. At least half, if not more, will go to the issues Ingrid's talking about the pool, and other ancillary things that need to be done.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Ingrid. Any questions on this particular resolution?
Is this something that we should use the contingency money for?
Well, I think generally speaking, although Mike did mention a couple improvements here, you would generally match the depreciable life of the improvements, you know, with your debt, which, you know, certainly you're doing with the pool. Yes, you could pay for it out of contingency, but it's still pretty early in the year.
Yeah, and
I
may I
prefer-
add
I prefer-
something? We had also spoken last year in our budget process that we might be able to use contingency for OPEB liability this year. We don't have it in the budget.
Correct. Yeah, and it's early in the year, truthfully. I'd rather save our dry powder if we ever need it.
Yeah, I support that, you know. Yeah, I think the times we've used contingency, it was towards the end of the year for,
Right.
for emergencies. Now, the pool is a very serious situation, but we feel that the 450, the debt service on that, amortizing it over 17 years is more palatable than taking $300,000 out of contingency.
So that was my follow-up question is, what kind of bond would this be? It wouldn't be a 18 or a 30-year bond, it would be a more short-term?
Well, we haven't determined the actual life of it yet. We'll meet with the financial advisors we have in our bond council on that. But it all depends on how the amortization of debt would be. So probably won't be 17 years, maybe 12 years.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense for what the actual cost of this will be, principal and interest, as opposed to out of pocket right now. So,
Well, I guess I would say that Ingrid gave us the debt numbers before. What was the debt number, Ingrid? I mean, 450,000 compared, the payment on that compared to the...
97 million.
Yeah, I was saying, it's like almost 100 million, right? So there's certainly a cost to this, but it's de minimis compared to the overall debt of the town.
Right.
Sorry.
Any other questions?
No, I
97,
think I think Nancy was right, but I saw
Yes,
Ingrid
yes,
flipping there.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
I was just trying to, again, it's contrary to, recommendations to be using bonds, to be paying for something in which the product, including paving, will not outlive the length of the bond term. And likewise with this, it's not exactly clear that the things that we're paying for using debt will actually outlive the length of the total bonding package. So
Well-
I guess that's my hesitation with this. And-
Unfortunately, we're the Board of Finance, and while this is a legitimate conversation point, we actually don't control the terms of the bind. That's the treasurer and the administration of the town. I don't disagree, by the way, with what you're saying, but it's not up to us to decide. I think, look, I mean, we have never really talked about our debt limit here at this board, but it's in the CAFR. I mean, our debt limit compared to the statutory limit is incredibly low.
15%.
Yeah, and, look, in total, it's $4.5 million. So you're talking about less than a 5% increase in our debt, and this particular one is low now. Whether it should be 10 years, 12 years, or 15,
Yeah, we'll make that determination.
Yeah, I mean-
And if we went the other way and took it out of contingency and all of a sudden there's an emergency, we'd have to bond for that anyway.
Yeah.
right. All right, I'll take a motion on this item.
I make a motion.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Mr. Hallahan, would you mind reading the last one, please?
See if I brought my glasses. Resolved that the Board of Finance recommends that the town of North Haven appropriate $1,250,000 for the acquisition of refuse containers. I got the trash. And the related equipment to facilitate curbside collection. The appropriation may be spent for acquisition costs, installation costs, design, engineering, and other consultants' fees, legal fees, of course, net temporary interest, and other financing costs, and other expenses related to the project, and that the town issue bonds or notes and temporary notes in the amount not to exceed $1,250,000 to finance the appropriation. The total amount of bonds issued shall be reduced by the amount of grants or other funds received and not separately appropriated for the project.
Thank you, Mike.
By the way, did our legal counsel, are they charging us by the word?
Well, But to that point, I know you were joking on that, Michael, but we decided to make this 3 separate resolutions so the public can vote on each one, rather than bundle it into one resolution.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Frida, very much. Thank
So
you for doing that.
this third resolution is something that's been knocked out of the Public Works Department for a few years now. These large cans, the 96-gallon cans, and this includes arms for the those side loader trucks that we have. The theory with that is these cans have a slot. The arms, when they're installed, pick the can up, flip it into the side loader aspect. We still have rear loaders. But the reason that we agreed to put this on the bonding side is that it would probably get knocked out in this coming budget. But we're faced with a growing workman's compensation issue here. I mean, these guys work very, very hard, ladies and gentlemen. They're out there, rain, sleet, snow, tremendous heat, and many times they get hurt. They go out on workman's comp, there's replacement costs. So this is designed to try to get into the future. Some cities and towns have already moved into this. In the end, for the first 8 to 10 months, if this gets passed by the public, and a lot of people want this. A lot of people call this office asking for these big cans. So for the first 8 to 10 months, you have still 2 men on a truck because you got to get acclimated to the logistics of it. As an example, if there's a can on the side of the driveway where the slot where the arm goes is reverse, the second man has to be out there to turn it around so the guy in the truck can pick it up and put it in. But what it eliminates is, I'm going to stand up for a second on this, okay? What it eliminates is the physical torque of making these movements that over the course of time break men down. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. A lot of the sanitation people want it, some of them don't. Some of them still like the rear loaders. But we're trying to get into the next stage to protect the integrity of the health of the employees that do this grueling and arduous job. And we'll see. It may pass and it may not pass, but the residents are going to make the decision.
Thank you, Micah.
This original, when this last came up for the budget, wasn't, does this equip the entire town? Because weren't we quoted between $2 and $4 million previously?
This is just the 96 cans. It's not that big recycle bin. That quote included the 2 sides of it, the 2 per household.
2 per house?
Yes.
This is 1 per house,
One per
okay.
household.
I thought it might have been a Black Friday special, okay. Very
Well,
good.
it's 1 recycling and 1 refuse per household, correct?
It's
Yes.
1, yeah, right.
95 gallon.
95
One
gallons.
recycling, 1 regular.
1 refuse.
Yes.
Okay. Was that what you were getting at, Mike?
Well, the answer was before it was 2 cans per home, and now it's only 1. Only 1, it is 1. So that's why it's 1.2, okay.
So the 96-gallon can contains both recycle and the bags, so.
So, humor me for a minute. If it's Christmas time and my kids get more gifts than they're accustomed to getting, and I fill up a lot of barrels with excess turkey and food, what happens then?
Good question.
So, you're saying there's multiple cans on the driveway?
Well, I get 1,
Right.
that's automated, right? So what if I have more garbage?
Second man will pick it up, throw it in the side.
So we're still gonna do the manual labor,
Yeah.
at least, okay,
At
at least right
At
now.
least for 8 months, 10 months to a year, yeah.
Or until we buy one more bucket, or
Yeah.
I guess the residents could buy a bucket, right? Is that possible?
They should, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
So in other words, there will not be any waste left at the curbside.
I guess that's the easy way to answer my question, yes. Right.
96 gallons is pretty big, that's a lot of gifts you're getting. Holy cow, a lot of turkey.
One's gonna be for you, don't worry.
Yeah, sure.
Further conversation, comments, questions on this particular item?
So I had the same concerns about either bulk pickup or holidays where, somebody might be, downsizing or clearing out their house and they have a big pile of things that are going out. And the other issue is, this really was listed under capital improvements. And so I think that, again, I'm always asking, what is it that the taxpayers are getting as a benefit to this? I can certainly understand that our sanitation workers work very hard, frequently in the dark, and they put their bodies through a lot in collecting our garbage and recycling. However, if we could say to the taxpayers that your garbage would be picked up twice as often, or it would be picked up, in a more efficient manner, or it would be cheaper to the town, or this particular type of mechanical efficiency would allow us to have a smaller staff, then there would be a cost savings. But I don't necessarily see any of those things. And in fact, when I asked the director of Streets and Roads about this, he said that people certainly would eventually be freed up from having to do this type of work because the truck would be doing the work for them. But he would simply, shift them to doing something else in the department. So there really wouldn't be any cost savings in terms of manpower. So,
Well, that's my understanding too, Nancy. He would redeploy the individuals to other tasks.
exactly.
Which either means there's a lot to do in town.
Right.
And/or we are able to save what might be a future hire by doing this.
Right. And again, in Florida, this makes perfect sense, where you have a much more predictable weather, and you have two giant bins that you can put out at the end of the driveway. But when we have sleet and snow and conditions that might result in the cans being slightly askew and not, perfectly lined up so that the mechanical arms can go pick up these bins, then you've got these guys having to lift a 96-gallon container as opposed to a much smaller container. So I'm really wondering if that will result in even greater injuries.
I would
So,
hope not, but I guess I'll leave that up to Mike from Streets and Roads to.
Yeah, I
Figure it
think
out.
that because this has been brought to our attention by residents also, it's not just Public Works. Our goal here is to let the public vote on it. Bring it to a public meeting, see what they say. So what are the residents getting? A $60 can that may cost them more if they had to buy that can. What we're getting in the town is perhaps not a negative on our workman's comp self-insured fund.
Yeah, this is the only way that this program can actually be implemented, because we've tried this before, and every time this goes in the budget, it gets cut out. We just don't have the wherewithal to have it be part of the mill rate in a single year. So spreading out this cost, it does make sense.
But I did say to the Public Works, that I work very closely with those fine gentlemen there and women, if this gets shot down by the public, we're done with this. This is it. This is the chance. We're not going back. This is it. We want one shot, so.
yeah, again, in my opinion, this is just another thing that can break. The mechanical arms can break. They're susceptible to, cold weather, and, it's mechanics. And I think that it's just another thing that would have to be potentially repaired. So that's just my feeling.
Easier to repair a mechanical piece than it would a person. So.
No, I again, I am not in any way
And
diminishing.
you don't have to live in Florida to use these. The town of Branford has them. I think there's
Right.
another number
Yes.
of towns that have
And we
them.
use them at our condo
Yeah.
complex on State Street.
But I think what Mike said, let's leave it up to the public.
Yeah.
And other towns do use them. Milford, very happy with them. Branford, the residents there love them. So it's progressing into that. We're not the pioneers on this.
No.
We're sort of following a trend here.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'll take a motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I oppose.
One abstention? Thank you. That can-
Abstention? No.
Sorry. All right,
No.
Incorrect.
One opposed.
I think Tammy knows that. My apologies. All right. That concludes this portion of the meeting, and we'll move on to public comment if there are anyone in the audience who would like to speak. Third Selectman Boehme.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Sally Boehme, 5 Blossom Drive. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the whole reval letter and that issue. I did see the first selectman's comments online, helping people to understand, and you offered, the 2 options, calling the number and then the February 20th deadline. But in your comments tonight, after you mentioned the, quote, sticker shock, unquote, you said there were 3 options, so I put 1, 2, 3 down.
Well, the third is to reduce the mill rate. That's.
Oh,
yeah,
you never said that?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I was referring to.
All right, I wasn't sure if it was appealed to court, because after you, depending upon how you do with BAA, you can go to court.
Yeah.
But, so that was the third one, okay. You never delineated it by number, so I wasn't sure if I missed something. And you also mentioned how it was nice of you to share, your personal reval went up 110,000, and the number that it goes up is important, but I want the folks out there to understand what's really more important is the percentage increase. So your 110,000, if your current house was assessed at 220, that's a 50% increase. If your current assessment is 440, that's only a 25% increase. And the reason why I emphasize the percentage is because that's really going to determine how the mill rate change is going to impact your tax obligation. And so, of course, it's too soon to tell that. We're at the doorstep of the budgetary process. Fasten your seatbelts. So it's really the percentage increase that you see, and how and what percentage decrease will ultimately happen in the mill rate that will
So
determine.
Sally, what I've been doing with residents,
Yeah,
I start out using my own example, and I tell them, I walk them through the calculations over the phone.
oh, okay.
In my case, it's roughly a $3,900 a year tax increase. And then I say, give me the numbers off of your form. And then I walk them through what the tax increase would be for them. I don't use the percentages because they're more interested in what the dollars are. How much more is it going to cost me? And then I walk them through. Today was a good example. I walked a gentleman through 5 different options of what the mill rate reduction potentially could be, A, B, C, D, E, F, and said this is what your taxes would be. Well, after that exercise, yeah, it took me about 15 minutes, but they felt much better because they understood it in terms of dollars, not percentages.
Right, yeah, well, but there's 2 different things. There's tax dollars, and then there's the assessment change. You reported your assessment change going up 110. Mine went up 53, which is it was a 32.6% increase. Your 110 is the assessed value increase. That's
right.
nothing to do with tax dollars. So it's the percentage increase that's going to determine your tax dollar amount, because if it depends on what the percentage decrease is going to be in the mill rate. And and we don't know that yet, because we don't know, you guys are going to set a budget, you're going to know the grand list, and whatever mill rate is necessary to fund that grand list, that's going to be the mill rate. We have no idea what the mill rate is going to be. And you could give 5 examples of what it could be, but whatever that percentage decrease is, if it's more or less than your percentage change in your assessed value, that's really going to determine if your taxes are going to go up and by how much or down. And just piggybacking on what Mrs. Barrett said about 2019, I do recall also Gary, our assessor, saying that 1/3 of the folks had their assessment go up, 1/3 had it stay the same, and 1/3 had their assessment go down. In fact, in 2019, I was one of those who had their assessment go down a little bit. And so, again, the percentage change versus the percentage change in the mill rate really affected the final dollar tax change. So I just want people to, yes, maybe percentages are harder for people to understand, but the percentage increase of your assessment is really what is going to determine your tax obligation. But we'll have to wait and see. What I would really like to say, you know, we had a little bit of a discussion last month about the fund balance, and, you know, you had reported that, you know, we lost our AAA rating and that the low fund balance was one of three major causes for that, and we talked about the fund balance. And, you know, it would be impossible for us to get that fund balance to, you know, the rate that these rating agencies are looking for in a year or two or even 3 years. This is going to have to be a combination of a lot of factors over many years in order to get our fund balance in the 10 to 12. In my opinion, and the main reason why I wanted to come up here is I don't want us to get lost in the weeds of the reval impact on the budget formulation process. The budget is going to be what it's going to be. But I'm hopeful that we can tighten our spending belts because, and this is what I said last month, if you recall, we can't keep increasing our budget by $8 or $9 million a year, because when that budget amount goes up, the fund balance, whether it's 8%, 10%, that's going to go up. You'll remember years ago I said, if we keep increasing our spending at this rate, it's keeping our fund balance at 8%, and that's just 8%, would be like trying to run up the down escalator. And you kind of like that analogy, if you remember that.
I do, yeah.
It's more years ago than I think you and I want to remember. We've been at this together for a long time. So I guess that's the point that I'm trying to make. Yes, the reval really screws up the whole budgetary process as far as explaining to people at that budget town meeting how it's going to affect their taxes. When the other 4 years, when your assessments don't change, it's easy to say, the last 2 years, for example. 2 years ago, our mill rate went up 1.94 mils. This current year, 1.99. For the average homeowner with about a $210,000 assessed value, saw almost about $400 increase each year. So, folks, taxes have gone up the past 2 years. Let's not forget about that. Let's not forget about that gentleman who you had a very special moment with at the budget town meeting where he was saying, I can't afford this. Right. You will recall, I reminded you of that a few months ago. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is, yes, the reval is going to make it difficult to explain to folks how whatever the mill rate is going to be that we are going to be presenting at referendum, it's going to be difficult to explain to them how it's going to affect them, because some people's assessments went up 25%, some went up 50%. Those that went up 50% are going to be paying more. I don't care how much that mill rate goes down. It's not going to go down 50%. So I just don't, let's just focus on doing the best budget we can, keeping in mind that our taxpayers have endured 2 significant tax increases in a row, this year and last year. And let's keep our minds on that we want our fund balance to grow. And so we can't keep spending $8-9 million more a year. Something has to give. So, we always say it's going to be a challenging year, and every budget year is challenging for different reasons. And so I just hope we can come up with the best budget possible, given the reval and given the fact that our citizens have already endured 2 significant tax increases in a row. Let's just see where it goes. But I'm sure that you will do your best to explain this to people, and I'm sure that the assessor will provide us with some data on these increases. Like I said, 5 years ago, a third went down, a third stayed the same, and a third increased. I'd be very interested to hear his data on that. Is it 80% went up this year? You know, it could be. As everybody's going up? I don't know.
Well, you know, as I said earlier, we're up 37 to 38%, depending on the style of house. So what you're going to see from me in the budget presentation next year, instead of one number in terms of what the average house is, I'm going to play out 4 or 5 different levels.
That's a good idea.
And I'm going to equate each level with whatever mill rate we come up with. This is what it means to you in this category. I'm going to be doing that. But I'll tell you where I don't necessarily disagree with the things you said. Only one thing I would disagree with, I'm linking the reval into the budget because of the very reasons about the 2 tax increases. So
Yep.
the reval is going to have an impact on this coming budget in terms of reduced spending, because you can't hit the people with increased spending and then a reval that's going to generate a tax increase for most of the
No,
people.
I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying we have to tighten our belts.
Right,
That's what I'm saying.
But I'm saying the same thing.
Okay.
But I'm using reval as a tool to control the spending, because the property values have gone up, and we haven't figured out the mill rate yet.
No.
So, you know, a lot of people are going to get an inherent tax increase to begin with, because some are going to either zero out, just like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So, and that's how I'm looking at it. In a reval year, you can't have an 8% spending.
Right.
That's kind of what
Well,
we're
I would be
saying.
interested to hear from the assessor that, for example, 25% of the homeowners, it went up 25%. 25% went up 35%. 40% went up 50%. You know, that would be helpful, especially with your idea, which I think is a very good one, of giving different examples, because those examples would meet all of those different situations.
Yep.
It really complicates it. It does.
It really does.
It always does, but this year, because a big factor, I think, in these reval increases is home sales. I mean, I see it as a real estate attorney. Almost every closing I do, the property sold, and not just in North Haven, in area towns, the property sold for more than listing. You know,
So to your question about that data, this is what I can tell everybody here. The average home in North Haven now has a gross value of $412,000. Multiply times the 70%, come up with like $299. Okay.
okay,
The median, not the mean, the
Right.
median, which is the middle between the bottom half and the upper half, the average house right now, the gross value is $388,571. So the average, both the average and the median have gone up about $100,000. So you said you were at 53. I'm at 112, let's say.
Yeah.
Around that. Some have gone up $150,000.
yeah. So it's going to be hard for some people.
And, you know, a lot of, you know, what I found interesting was people thought it was just North Haven. We're not, this
No.
is
Okay.
all over the state. This
Yeah.
is, happened last year, this year, next year.
Yeah.
And there's some big increases.
Right, right. Well, and there's nothing that we're going to be able to do. It's going to be very difficult for us to do something with the mill rate to help the folks with very high
Yes.
increases. But again, those increases could be because they put on an addition.
Yeah.
They have to also look at, you know, what they did to their home, you know, like you said about
Air
air
conditioning,
conditioning, but that's not as significant as maybe putting you know, an addition with an extra bathroom and a bedroom, that's gonna, you know.
Yeah. And a lot of people have done that. In my case, the air conditioner system was $12,000. And there were other upgrades in the house, too.
Right.
So you have to do that in your home. You have to, you have to make these
But
changes.
for years during our the budget town meeting, when we said, okay, the mill rate is going up 1.94, like 2 years ago, we always used 210 as the average assessed value. Assessed value, again, folks, is just 70% of the market value. Are you giving market value numbers, that 380 and the, or,
So I've got four numbers.
yeah,
I've got the average household and the median household, gross value. The average household at the 70%.
Okay.
And the median at the 70%.
okay. Well, you have to, the 70% is what really matters,
Right,
because
right.
that's what they're paying tax on.
Right.
That's the other thing a lot of people don't realize, their assessed value is only 70% of the appraised or
That's not,
market value.
that's why I show both,
Yeah.
because a lot of people don't realize that, you're right.
Yeah.
So I show two numbers.
But they're not gonna pay taxes on the
Yes.
market appraised value. They're
Right.
paying it on the assessed.
And that's what we stress when we talk to the
Right.
people. The assessor also put a beautiful piece out, I think it was referenced here earlier,
Hmm.
on the town website explaining all this, so.
So, yeah, that's, I think, what Mrs.
Yep.
Barrett referenced when she said there's some question and answers on there, you know. So, but back to my point, we always use 210 the past few years.
As the net value.
As an average. So what, are you, that is going up to what, in your opinion, at this early phase? I realize
Yeah,
it's gonna change.
at this early phase, I will take the 70% of the average and the median, which is now 412 and 388, and I'll show the net at the 70%. That's what is taxed on. So it's gonna be much more than 210.
That's
So-
what I'm saying, I'm trying to figure out
288.
how much more.
Well,
So
it's
it's gonna
about,
be-
it's about 280.
288.
280?
288?
88.
Okay.
Right, let's say 288.
Wow.
So the 210 is going to 288.
Right.
The data that I'm
Right.
using right now,
Right.
the assessor.
Well, I calculated, you know, our current mill rate is 34.64, that the mill rate would have to go down to 26.12 for my taxes to stay the same. So anything over, that's just for me, folks. Keep in mind, that's based on my relatively low assessment. I have a very small house, 1,300 square feet. Most of you own much bigger houses than that. So, you know, but once you figure that out, anything over that is, you're gonna have a tax increase.
That's right.
But I don't want people to think, oh, that's the new mill rate. No, no,
No.
that's not. We don't know. We
don't
do
know.
not know, and we won't know until probably April, when we finalize the budget in preparation for the budget town meeting. But I just hope that we do our best to sharpen our pencils and erasers and get a tighter, we need a tight budget. We need a tight budget, especially this year. That's what I'm saying. We can't have these $8 million increases every year. That's what's gotten us into.
I think everybody here agrees with that.
Yeah, well,
So there's no dispute on that. so.
okay. We've been doing that, so it's time to put the brakes on. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Deb.
Thank you, Shelley. Anyone else? Jenny?
Hi, Jenny Caldwell, 69 Kimberly Circle. I just have two questions on the bonding. First one, the second bond that you talked about with the roof, and you said there are major issues with the roof. Does any of that impact
It's,
the rest of the rec center? Like,
it's-
what was the issue with the roof that created such a,
the roof, it's the substructure of the roof, right? The roof
Yes.
itself was repaired, but when they did that, and Richie explained this, but I'm not the contractor, he is, there was some other work that needed to be done. I believe the pool is in operation, right?
It's an operation and it's safe, but the structure needs to be supported.
and that's just over
Yeah,
the
it's not the rec
pool,
center.
not on the rec
Over the-
center
right,
side?
That's
yes,
right.
Okay.
over the
That's
pool.
right.
Okay. And when this gets presented and people vote on it, is there gonna be a breakdown of what some of those other items, I know you mentioned the Church Street, but what some of those other items are gonna be that's gonna be covered under
Yes.
this bond? Okay. And then the one about the trash cans. I just have a couple of quick questions about that. It's gonna be one trash bin, and then is there gonna be a recycle bin, or are we still using the regular recycling bins?
You still use the regular recycle bins.
Okay, so it's just the trash
Right.
cans?
Right.
Okay,
But some people put in these 96 gallon cans, both recyclable and waste in there. That's what happens sometimes. So.
okay. But really, if you want your stuff to be recycled, you shouldn't put it in the
You really,
trash
you
can,
you
right?
really, you really shouldn't. That's
Right,
the
because
green-
then it's just
right.
going to the landfill. I
Right.
mean, that's what, okay. All right, that was it.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.